Fast, efficient and affordable business-grade hosting solutions, domain registration, SSL certificates and more. We also monitor and provide website security and update services, website builds, email hosting amongst other sensational products. If you have a question about your web page or your presence on the internet in general, no job is too big or too small. Visit our website today, or better yet, contact us at blueoceanwebhosting.com.au and leave your website issues to us.
Welcome to episode 782 of the Aussie Tech Heads. I'm Jason Oakley and this is Will Tompkinson. Hey Will.
Hey mate.
How's things going up your end?
I beg your pardon?
That's rude, isn't it?
So we what do we have? Yep, 30 degrees in here tonight currently.
Holy crap.
What is it? It's 9:15. It's 30 degrees. But yesterday it was topped out at like 26.
Yep.
And the night before it was 30 something, but it was only like 6 degrees that night. So we're having this weird weather at the moment.
But I got the AC on in here. Keep it at a good temperature.
Yeah. Some of us can't afford that luxury. I mean, I technically have AC in every room.
Yeah. Just can't have it on all the time.
They come on during the day when the solar's pumping out, but although it's not like just even the air moving. I've got the fan on and it's it's hot, but it's bearable.
Yep.
So
this afternoon,
I was going to say it's weird weather we're having. We had they have massive snow dump in the snowfields last weekend, and then that cold front come through and it went from 30 degrees to like an 18-degree day. And then 3/4 of the east coast of inland Australia is currently underwater.
Are we supposed to be summer at the end of next week?
Oh, I don't think it. Well, we don't have spring at the moment. We're just bouncing between winter and summer.
Yeah.
It's winter for a couple of days.
It averages out to spring, right? If you average out the numbers.
On average, yeah.
It's just one day it could be 40 and the next day it could be 10, but if you average that out, it's spring.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I got a lot of family currently displaced with all the floods that are happening.
Oh, crap, not again? Or was it still?
Well, technically still, because especially down through sort of southern and like central and southern Queensland and northern Victoria, southern New South Wales and northern Victoria, it's just so flat that the water's moving so slowly.
Yeah, it's got no.
It's taking. They thought a lot of the areas were going to peak like last week, but they think now it's going to be like middle of next week. It's just so slow. Like,
and by the time it goes down, it's on its way back up again.
Well, it's just so spread out and just such that they I mean the middle of those areas flooding isn't new. Like we've got photos and stuff of people driving paddle steamers and stuff across what are now farms. So like it has flooded before.
Yeah,
everyone's just forgotten that it has, and everyone built in floodplains.
Yeah, they're supposed to be getting outlawed soon or something, or so talked about it. Whether it actually
they talk about it every time
it
floods.
Yeah.
Although I'll tell you what though, what is getting I'll see if I can find the post on it. But I read an article the other day that insurance companies let's see if I can find it.
They're going to raise Lismore's base level up 10 meters.
No, insurance companies actually where is it? New South Wales New South Wales flood victims try to piece their lives and homes back together, they're receiving devastating news from insurers. Insurers are telling residents there's a moratorium on flood protection in the community amid recent events. Despite the area's historical and frequent flood events, homeowners in central western communities such as Forbes and Molong are receiving letters and calls from insurers notifying them that flood protection policies will not be available to be renewed. A Forbes resident told the Daily Telegraph that their insurer informed them on October 31st that their flood cover would not be renewed beyond December because it's a risk to their property that's been reassessed. Another resident was told that their insurer would not renew any form of protection for their property. Forbes Mayor Phyllis Miller said that the insurers said there was a moratorium on postcode 2871.
Yeah, they don't like paying money. They like taking it, them insurance places, but they don't like paying it out when it's due. And
no, I'm still having a hell of a time with them.
Yep.
But yeah, so basically, if you're living anywhere that has had flood waters in it, they just keep an eye on your insurance policy because they may cancel your flood.
And what about bushfires? They'll have to cancel that as well. Couldn't put it past them.
Yeah. Well, and then when you stop, like... Yeah.
Why get insurance at all by that stage?
Like I know somebody who they didn't have bushfire cover because they lived in an area where there had never been a bushfire. But I can't remember the exact order it happened, but I think their shed caught on fire.
Yep.
And the strong winds caught the bushland around their property on fire, and the wind changed direction and blew back the other way, and the embers set their house on fire.
Yep.
But because it was caused by a bushfire, the house wasn't covered.
Oh.
Right. Even though they technically started the fire.
Yeah.
And they're like, but hang on, how can you prove that the embers... He just basically said to him, how can you prove that the embers that landed on the house were from the bush and not from the shed, which was 3 foot away from the house?
Yep.
And they're like, oh, we can... I said, no, you can't. And this can either go one of two ways. You can either just man up and pay it out, or I can take you to court and we can drag this out and you pay 10 times as much. Yep. Oh, by the way, did I mention I'm a lawyer?
That doesn't go down too well.
Guess what they did? They paid out. But yeah, no, they're just scum. They don't mind taking your money. But I mean, what do? I know some people who don't have insurance. They just pay the couple of $1,000 a year they put aside. Yep. Instead of paying it to an insurance company. They put it in the bank, which is fine if it's 30, 40 years before you never to use it. But if it's 12 months and you've got to use it, well...
You haven't got quite that much there.
Because we did that. Like, we had the massive hailstorms 2 years ago. Whenever that was. Yeah, 18 months ago. 2 years ago. Wow. That, did a whole heap of damage. And then we had the flood come through at the start of this year, which did a whole heap more damage.
Yep.
And then a couple months after that, I had another smaller flood come through and did a bit more damage. Sure, I'm still fighting with the insurance company, but at least I'm getting most of my stuff paid out.
Yeah.
Not as much as I would have hoped, but at least I'm getting more than if I didn't have insurance at all. So, jeez. I don't know. 'Tis all fun and games.
That's how it is from now on. It's going to be the new norm.
Mm-hmm. The new norm. Make things as difficult as possible for everybody involved.
Wasn't he on those Life Be In It ads?
Norm? Wasn't he the dude who interviewed people and had toilet paper on his face?
Yeah, that too. Till the poor fella had a nervous breakdown from all of that.
He did. Although he did recover, I understand. But yeah, he had so much going on that he...
Don't spread yourself too thin, son.
Just, yeah. Well, unfortunately.
Speaking of which, I saw today they're going to reboot Mother and Son.
They've rebooted everything else. Why not?
Why not?
I mean, really. There's I can't remember I was watching a YouTube clip the other day of the reboots coming out next year.
Yep.
And there's like 10 of them. And there's another ROPD coming out.
Yep.
That'll be cool because the first one was really good.
Yep.
Yeah, there's just so many
other stuff. It's like, why even have a new idea of any kind? Fresh idea. We'll just reboot all the old stuff until ad infinitum.
apparently they're looking at bringing gladiators back.
Ah,
Because the gladiator legend Wolf says he's appearing on the 2023 reboot.
ah,
So there's the Neighbours reboot,
yep. That's gone to Amazon now.
a Blade reboot.
Yep.
What else is there? Oh, I don't know. So much stuff. Rock Whiz.
Oh, that's coming back.
Yeah, that's coming
They've
back.
got new presenter there.
2023 Survivor. Rock Whiz doesn't say.
Yeah.
DC Comics reboot. Friday the 13th reboot.
There was
Yeah, another Back to the Future reboot because there hasn't been 400 of those. Never happened. Futurama reboot. Dungeons and Dragons 2023, the movie. Mother and Son, yeah, ABC reboot. Who's it going to be? Denise Scott,
Yep.
Matt O'Keefe. Denise Scott and Matt O'Keefe is Maggie and Arthur. Dear.
Sounds great, right?
Exorcist trailer 2023 reboot.
Yikes.
House Party 2023 reboot. Yeah, it's just stupid. Like, everybody apparently has just completely forgotten how to, do something.
I remember on Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, and they were doing a film in the film, and they were saying, this is going to make House Party 1 look like House Party 2. Or House Party 3 even.
Isn't there been a dozen of those already?
Probably. I haven't seen any of them.
Australian Idol reboot. Titanic 2, Jack's Back reboot. It's a parody, apparently. I kind of hope they do that because they kind of deserves it.
He meets up with Neptune and Triton underwater and becomes a sea god or something.
2023 Big Brother.
Jeez. Wonder if Radar will be doing that one.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
How is that going to work? Bill Murray was supposed to be
Scarlett
in
Johansson.
that, and he didn't know. They couldn't get in contact with him because Bill Murray's always been difficult for anyone to ever get in contact with, so he missed out. And then he was like, "Oh, hey, I would have liked to have been in Roger Rabbit." Like, well, we tried to get you.
The reboot apparently it's got Michael Payne, John Mulaney, Scarlett Johansson, Jacqueline Phoenix, Bobby Mahanan, Kate McKinnon. Degrassi reboot. HBO Max reboot set to premiere in 23. Filming began in Toronto, so it's going to be Canadian.
Just reboot all the things.
Power Rangers movie reboot gets a release date.
One of the guys died recently. The green Power Ranger.
Yeah, I saw that. Blade reboot. X-Men animated series reboot. Super Mario Brothers. Oh, have you seen the trailer for that?
Super Mario Brothers.
Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Is not. I don't care how much of a voice he does or doesn't put on. He is not Mario in any way, shape, or form.
They should have got the original guy. He's still around. He can do it.
Anybody. It could have literally been anybody in the world could have done a better job than Chris Pratt.
It's Chris Pratt playing Chris Pratt.
Yeah. I mean, except maybe Nicolas Cage, because he probably would have done the same thing. But, like, seriously.
See, Ryan Reynolds' as Pikachu worked because in the end you found out why it was like that, but...
Yeah.
It's...
Buffy reboot?
What? These Hollywood people are crazy, man.
Exorcist reboot, you saw that. Lord of the Fallen.
Couldn't be Joss Whedon, though. Everyone hates him now, so...
Babylon 5 project. By Warner Brothers.
Apparently that's good, but it's not available to stream anywhere in the world, so... It was like the other night, I wanted to watch Tank Girl.
Oh, I love that movie.
The only place you can watch it streaming, quote, legally, unquote, is if you've got Disney Plus and then you also pay for an MGM streaming subscription on top of your Disney Plus subscription. You can watch it on Disney Plus.
Really?
Yep. Not available anywhere else on any other streaming. You can't even buy it in Google Play Movies or iTunes Movies or anything like that, which I happily would have done.
Just stream it on Twitch.
Yeah.
Because apparently you can do that now.
You can do it on Twitter.
I'm sorry, on Twitter, that's what I meant, yeah.
Everyone's uploading movies to Twitter because Elon turned off the copyright checker. He's like, we don't need that microservice. I don't even know why it's there.
If you run a VPN, you can watch it on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
It's on Amazon, just not in our location.
Yeah. It's illegal to have it in Australia. How crazy
Yeah, because
is that?
the internet stops, once you get over the border. It's on, same thing on YouTube. It's available on YouTube.
Yep. You have to buy
But
it.
not in Australia.
Why don't they want us to watch Tank Girl? I got the
Tank Girl.
video.
Oh, yeah.
I got the video back in the day. I got nothing to play it on anymore.
Yeah, I know, right?
VCR.
As far as I'm concerned, if I have the video, I can just do it anyway because I own it.
Yeah. I paid for it once. That should be enough.
It's available on IMDb, archive.org. Sorry.
Archive.org's got it.
Full version of it on archive.org.
Nice. I have to check that out then. I even
don't
found
know
one
for how
place
long,
that said
but-
it had been available on Tubi, but they must have removed it.
It was added 2 years ago and it's still up, so.
Yep.
Public library exception to US Copyright Act.
I did watch something. Oh, Spinal Tap. I watched that last week on archive.org. It's on there.
You don't think of archive.org being somewhere you want to go and watch movies, really, do you?
No. But apparently it's the new thing.
Apparently
kids.
it's good. I guess it's probably fine for movies where they don't actively chase
Yep.
infringements. So
Fringe popular cult shows or something that they're like, well, we weren't going to make any money from it.
Well, I watched, I think, I'm going to double check myself before I say this.
Double check yourself before you double wreck yourself.
I think I watched Rocky Horror on archive.org.
Ah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Rocky Horror's on archive.org.
Nice. I'll have to watch that. It's been like 20, 30 years since I saw that. I
Really?
actually went and saw it in Sydney. They had it at I can't remember what suburb it was, but you could see it. They have the Mystery Science Theatre 3000 type thing where they show it on there, but you also have people up on stage acting, and then they're like, if this is the first time you've been to a Rocky Horror thing, that makes you a virgin. You have to stand up and dance when we do the dance.
Yep. There's actually a list of stuff you're supposed to take when you go to the interactive shows.
Well, it was hilarious because we're sitting on the bus and you can see all these people walking to the theatre and these old ladies sitting on the bus going, look at all these girls wearing these stockings. They look like prostitutes. I can't believe people are wearing that these days. Fishnet stockings out in public. And we're like, yeah, we know where they're going to.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find it. I found it on one of the theatre websites. Here we go. No, that's driving.
Someone doing it in Brisbane.
Yeah, they had it in they were doing. Oh, where was it? One of the theatres in Brisbane. Not actually in Brisbane. This side of Brisbane was going to close down, and they were just going to do a massive, big, interactive. They're going to do all the cult movies.
Yep.
And the ones where, like Rocky, where everybody dresses up to go and watch it. And they did like Back to the Future. They did Rocky. They did. What else did they do? They did. I can't think now. A couple other. those cult classic ones. But and they put up a list of all the things.
I went and saw The Crow somewhere outside of Brisbane when I was up there. They had a cult classic show. You can buy alcohol and at the bar and take it in the cinema with you. I thought that was fantastic.
Immersive. Here we go. See if this tells me what I need. Movie tickets. Oh, it doesn't. I'm not going to find it now because I'm looking for it. But basically, said you need to take. You need to take a newspaper. You need to take a torch. You need to take rice. You need to take toilet paper. You need to take something else.
Yep.
And it tells you on the thing it tells you where you use that.
Yep.
Those things for.
That
and
was
it was hilarious. It was great.
This afternoon I wandered down to the local radio station, did some practicing for doing a show, so I should be back on the air soon. 2 Bob Radio.
2 Bobs. That's a bit more than 2 bits.
Yeah, it's where I started back in, must have been about 87 or something. I started in radio at 2 Bobs, so I'll be back there soon. So I was just getting used to how their music player, Jazzler, works and where the music is and how they like presented and stuff. So I did a demo show that went for about an hour and recorded it for them to listen to. So hopefully I'll be on the air again soon. But I picked the right time to join because this Sunday they've got the Christmas party, and then Friday they've got the Foster Radio Christmas party that I'll be at too. So I'll be at a couple of Christmas parties that I wasn't going to be going to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's only like 6 weeks away now, or not even.
Yeah.
What, Christmas is only, 1, 2, 3... Hang on. I can't count. 2, 3, 4 in a couple of days.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. What's going on this year, man? It was like, last time I checked, it was like Easter, and then sort of it went from Easter to Halloween to Christmas. I don't know where the rest of the year went.
It jumps around like that. I already bought my Christmas present. Got a 2 terabyte NVMe Samsung 990 Pro Series SSD drive. Put all my Steam games on it.
I think it comes under the category, tell me you've got too many games without telling me you've got too many games. I can't talk. I've got a 2 terabyte spinning disk, and I've got 300 gig free, and that's only Steam games. And there's 2. I actually checked. There's 2 Steam games not on that drive. They're on my C drive. So, plus Minecraft and its mod packs are all on my C drive as well. So I probably don't even have that. I probably have used all that 2 terabyte. Honestly, I need to boot my NAS up just so I can copy all my games on. The problem is I install them all because when you want to play them, it takes forever to re-download it and install it. But apparently there's a way you can like put all the files on my NAS so that if I want the game on demand, it just copies it across. It doesn't have to actually re-download it.
Oh, okay. That'd be nice. But then you'll get an update and you'll have to re-download anyway.
Yeah, but only the updates. Like, apparently it'll do it. There's a Steam manager. I don't know exactly how to do it, but I watched Linus do it. There's a way you can have Steam running, whether it's on the PC or whether it's on the NAS, and it keeps the files updated. So when you go to grab it, it just pulls them back across.
Oh, nice.
And same if you've got a game installed, you got, say, because I got my computer now, I got Bub's computer, and they've all got Steam on them. But apparently there's a way where if we both have the same game, it can put the updates on the NAS, and then it can just pull the updates off there, so it doesn't have to download it twice.
Like you did with that big Case Freeze LAN party.
Yeah, that was a hell of a thing.
You want to watch a fun video? Check that one out.
Oh yeah, that's just wild. Everything about that. Was it? I can't remember. Was it like? Didn't he have like 6 gigabit networks or something running simultaneously? And
like that.
Yeah, that was just stupid.
Because you can. That's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's face it. At the end of the day, like, because there was a thing. He actually did a Ask Me Anything the other day, and somebody said, are there any decisions you've made for the, like any bad financial decisions you've made for the business? And they're like, well, yes and no. So there's some decisions that have been bad initially, but in the long run, is it because everything we do, we put on YouTube, and everything we do basically ends up, even when we screw up just through YouTube revenue, we end up making money on it. So, there's not really any decisions per se that are bad business decisions. There might be some questionable financial decisions, but everything ultimately has worked. So
all comes out in the wash.
Yeah, so it's interesting how that happens. I can't seem to make any financial decisions that work.
No,
so
that's the problem. Right? Here's a decision. Should we do some news?
If I say no, can we go home?
Okay, I am home. Wait, what?
Not to our home, to somebody else's home.
Hope they got pizza.
Can't knock on your neighbour's door. I'm staying the night.
Don't eat much. Where's the liquor cabinet?
I've already been fed and watered. You good? Just put me to bed.
Both houses of New South Wales Parliament have passed mandatory data breach notification rules that will apply to state agencies and departments, statutory authorities, local councils and some universities. The Privacy and Personal Information Protection... Holy cow, what kind of bill is this? The Privacy and Personal Information Protection Amendment Bill passed the upper house on Wednesday, having cleared the lower house of the previous day. The bill is now marked as awaiting assent. It's due to become into force a year after assent. The leader of the opposition in the Legislative Council, Penny Sharp, said state Labor had been asking for these changes for quite some time. We are pleased that the government has finally brought a proposal before the House to deal with this serious issue, and I indicate at the outset that we do not oppose the bill, she said. New South Wales public sector agencies hold substantial sensitive information about the people of New South Wales, including personal, health and financial information. It is currently not mandatory for New South Wales public sector agencies to report data breaches of personal and health information under the Privacy and Personal Information Protection Act. I have to say I'm completely shocked by that. Greens MP Abigail Boyd called the changes long overdue. The bill does not do anything to keep our information safer from theft. It merely imposes a mandatory obligation on state-owned corporations and public sector agencies to disclose to people impacted by a breach of data held by that corporation or agency, she said. Frankly, it's astonishing that the obligation does not already exist and that it requires legislating at all.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's the legislation part of it that's the dumb part.
Yeah.
Like, common courtesy and appreciation for other people is just completely up. It's disappeared that much from society that you have to pass legislation for people to do something that they should be doing anyway.
Especially for businesses, yep.
It's ridiculous.
If they don't say we have to do it, we ain't going to do it. We don't care.
And I mean, like, well, I was going to say it's in their best interest to do it, but I mean,
even my daughter
having said that, but what are they going to constitute as a data breach? Like, they're going to have some pretty interesting guidelines, because you can have a data breach without having data, like having people. How can I say it?
Get into
you can have a data breach that isn't really actually an issue, and you're just going to get people worked up over nothing. Like, you could literally have a data breach where it's only stolen, I don't know, say it's stolen their account numbers and that's all they got.
Yep.
So, well, that's pointless because they have no cross-reference for any of that information. Like, they can't do anything with it. But does that mean that still has to be reported? That means everybody's going to freak out and change their username and passwords and go and redo their licenses again? I mean, I get that if their data has been compromised to the point where that information is actually tangibly usable information, yes, absolutely. But, I mean, how many mild data breaches happen every year where a bulk email gets sent out to 27,000 people in the CC instead of the BCC line?
Yeah.
I mean, does that constitute a data breach?
Who knows?
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. This is the problem. You can't over legislation always, and this is exactly what we're seeing now with the 2FA garbage that's going on, with everything being legislated, and the tax office legislating accounting companies to have 2FA and all this stuff that's happening. The more legislation you put in place to make people do things, the more they work the system and find loopholes so they don't have to.
Yeah.
And they spend so much time, energy, and effort avoiding having to do it, that it becomes counterproductive, and the opposite often entails. Like, you know, security suffers because, you know, instead of worrying about, you know, as I was saying, instead of people worrying about keeping their information secure, they're just trying to give it to as many password protection services as they can, so they haven't got to think about 457 character passwords.
Yeah, and you end up.
So now, when that Simply Pass or one of those password sites gets hacked and the data gets stolen out of there, then what do you do? Because now the place that you've stored all your passwords isn't safe. Yeah. You don't have that list of passwords because they've been turned off so that nobody else can access it. So you can't access any of your password list to get to the website to change your password from your password list because you can't use it in the first place.
Yeah. You end up with everyone having password 123 because I get an SMS with a code, so without the code they can't get in there. So I can make my password 123, and then that makes it too easy.
I was on a government website today. It basically said you must have an 8-letter password, which is relatively standard.
Yep.
It must contain one capital letter, one number, and one non-alphanumeric.
Yep.
And this is on a federal government website.
8 characters not enough.
Yeah. And if you put the wrong password in, or you put a lesser password in,
yep,
it's not like it stops you.
Oh.
It just goes, it should be stronger than that, but you can still proceed if you want.
Jeez.
But it's okay because you told us that you're you, because you just said to send the confirmation email to that email address that you just provided.
Who else could it be?
It doesn't send it to the email address it has on record.
Oh.
It asks you to log in with 2FA using the email address that you provide to log in.
Oh, okay.
So if you've got somebody's username and password, but you don't have access to their emails, it doesn't matter because you get to tell it to send where the confirmation code anyway.
Wow. Super secure.
And if you click I forgot my password, then it goes forgot password or don't have access to email. You click on don't have access to email. It says, okay, we'll enter username and password, and you put that in, and it says, where would you like your confirmation code sent to?
Oh.
You can have it sent to your email or to your mobile, and you get to choose which one, and you get to send the... actually type in where you want it sent. So that's actually probably slightly worse than doing nothing at all. At least when you type in a username and password and it comes up and says incorrect, at least tell me, is it my username or my password that's incorrect?
Yep.
Because I've got multiples of both and I don't know which one you don't like. You don't have to tell me what it is. No. Just tell me username invalid or password invalid. Don't just say information invalid, because that doesn't help me find the right answer. Because even when I go and say forgot password, it says enter username, and you enter username and it says sent to email address you have on file. If you're not a valid user account, then it won't get sent anywhere. It's like, but
yeah,
how do I know what it is if you're not going to send it to me? Or just tell me it's wrong. Tell me it's invalid. Then I can try a different one I've got.
Yeah.
Stupid passwords. Anyway, enough of that. Oh dear. So, as you guys probably know, we're using Zoom. We have used Zoom for quite a while. We find it relatively good and stable and does everything it needs to do. But, as to be expected, shares of Zoom video communications have tumbled about 90% from their pandemic peak in October 2020.
Big drop.
As the former investor Darling struggles to adjust to post-COVID world, the stock went down nearly 10% on Tuesday after the company cut its annual sales forecast It posted its slowest quarterly growth, prompting at least 6 brokerages to cut their price targets. The company, which became a household name during lockdowns due to the popularity of video conferencing, is trying to reinvent itself by focusing on business with products such as cloud calling service, Zoom Phone, and conference hosting, Zoom Rooms. Analysts, however, say that turnaround in the business is still a few quarters away, with growth mainstay unit slow, and competition from Microsoft Teams and Cisco WebEx and Salesforce's Slack gets intense. So it's interesting, yeah. Q like two and 3, and Q 2021 was like its best, and then it sort of obviously it's tailed off. Which I mean, yeah. The one thing that kind of hurt them, Zoom has needed to spend heavily to keep hold of the market share, spending to cling rather than to grow. The company operates expenses surged 56% in the third quarter as it spent more on product development and marketing. And adjusted operating margins shrank to 34% from 39%. So part of the problem is it's spending so much money just trying to hang on rather than reinvent itself. It's nearly one of those cases where you're better off stop developing the product you've got, leave it because it works perfectly fine, doesn't need to be touched for a while, and focus on redeveloping or redesigning the product.
I think I saw they were thinking of adding on calendars and all sorts of stuff now.
Exactly. And it's hard too because obviously a lot of people are going back to work and things are changing, although a lot of stuff is staying virtual, and there has needed to be a decent video conferencing software regardless of that.
Since Microsoft screwed up Skype.
Yeah, but see now Discord does video. And it's a multi-room, multi-access, multi-tiered structure. It's much more versatile than Zoom.
Do you need
Telegram does video and actually does really, really good video. It has actually quite a few nice features with the video and the way it handles stuff and the way it has. Telegram's very similar to, I guess, either. Oh, no, not really even Skype. What was that one we were using? Uvu. Back in the day when it was very good from a mobile. It had really low latency, really good clarity, and particularly very good audio clarity. But it also had, I guess, like Facebook in a lot of respects, you can start a group and you can just have 1 or 2 or 10 people in that group. You know, whoever you want to have, and each conversation is held independently of the other one. It's not like Discord where you join and leave rooms and swap rooms. You're actually locked into these groups until you leave, obviously, and so you can have a one-on-one or a multi conversation and stuff. So there are other things, and they're free. Like they're not, and I think this is what's hurting Zoom. They now lock down the one-on-one side of it. So a lot of people are going to alternatives because you just want to call your grandparents or you want to call your mate. You don't want to spend whatever it is, $10 a month or whatever it is, just to have that feature. You know, it's a bit different for business because it's a tax write-off and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't really matter. But
and then limit them to 40 minutes or something. Yeah,
you know, like if you know, I remember, like I talk to my sister occasionally, especially at the moment with the flood waters and stuff, and they're under evacuation orders and all that stuff. And it's easy to kill 2 or 3 hours, not really even talking, just having a phone on speaker and occasionally having a conversation in between.
Yeah,
you know, so it's not hard to do that sort of time, and a lot of these other programs do that better. Zoom on mobile is actually horrible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really bad. It works perfectly fine. It's just the audio, which is, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video, whatever you're watching, even a movie you watch, audio is always the key feature.
Yep.
Like I can watch a crappy cam copy of a movie if it's got good audio. But it can be the best 4K video in the world. If the audio shit, I won't watch it. Yeah. And that's true whether it's a meeting software, whether it's Zoom, Skype, whatever. And for some reason on now, like desktop, it's fine. But on mobile, the audio is just horrendous. Yeah. I don't know if they should downsample the video a bit to get better audio quality, but I think they're sacrificing audio quality to get better video.
Yeah.
Which, given that it's technically a business orientated software, mainly for business clients and things like that, the audio's always should be a priority.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'd hate for them to go away because they have shaken up the market to the point where people have realised what they need.
Yeah.
But going the way they're going, they're in a lot of trouble. Like, realistically, they're almost to the point where they're not. They're almost not turning a profit now. Yeah. Currently, their last margin was 34%. Realistically, most businesses, once you hit between 25 and 30% operating margin, you're not turning a profit.
Yeah.
So they're really in that. They're really in that sort of ballpark where it won't take much more of a drop, and they're going to be losing money. And of course, once you start doing that, well, you can't do that very long.
Yep.
Maybe their next best move is to open source it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the open source community will pay for things when it does what they want it to do, or where it has features that they can implement. And when there's add-ons, I mean, could you imagine having something like, with the power of the waiting room and the back end that Zoom has, automatically tied into something like OBS, where you don't have to add it as an integration, where it actually becomes part of it, and you can manage the wait room and manage the callers and manage the screen layout, all that directly through OBS?
Yeah.
I could see something like that being a fantastic solution. And people, I mean, I'd pay $20 a month to have that as a feature that you could use,
Yeah.
So,
And Zoom can be the back end.
Yeah.
There are growing calls for future mobile coverage funding, such as under the Mobile Black Spot program, to encourage active network sharing around telecommunications carriers. That consensus emerged
They're all characters.
That consensus emerged in submissions published by a Senate inquiry into co-investment in multi-carrier regional mobile infrastructure. The Black Spot model of funding a single carrier to build on a site has resulted in patchy service availability, tower owner Indra's Property and Customer Engagement Manager Jason Hawley told a committee. As a result, rural residents often find themselves having to carry mobiles from Telstra and Optus in case of a breakdown on a long trip. Hawley also told the committee that growing demand for connectivity for farm equipment was a brand new problem. Repairing a $750,000 tractor might assume the technician has access to the mobile network. I guess especially if they got those John Deere tractors that everything has to be online all the time.
We'll talk about that the other week. And that was a problem that they have regularly, because not like in America they have, well, actually in America they still have the old CDMA network, so they still have decent rural coverage.
Yeah.
But we don't have that here. That's not a thing.
No. Fixing on-farm coverage would yield up to $8 billion in productivity growth by enabling autonomous tractors and other robotics, he said. Pivotal's submission to the inquiry noted that while carriers offer co-location at Black Spot-funded sites, that rarely attracts other carriers to the location. Telstra, which has received 80% of Black Spot funding, only has other carriers at 35% of its funded towers. Pivotal wants to see Black Spot-funded sites utilise active RAN sharing, not just be open to equipment co-location opportunities. As Pivotal noted in its submission, impediments to the use of active RAN sharing are largely strategic and commercial. Policy interventions by government have been shown to be necessary to break down such barriers. Pivotal advocates that the MNO, mobile network operator who becomes responsible to deploy a site subsidised by the public purse, should provide active RAN sharing access to other operators on a commercial basis. Telstra and TPG are also pro-sharing, not surprising as the two are hoping to have a formalised sharing arrangement approved by the ACCC. TPG called for co-funded mobile infrastructure to be open access in the future.
Didn't you say Telstra gets 80% and the other providers get 35%?
Yeah, they're 35% on the Telstra network, so 80% of the Black Spot funding goes to Telstra, but of those towers, only 35% are being shared with other carriers.
I was going to say, because maths
Yeah.
It's hard. I'm the same. Like, I'm with Vodafone. I have been for years because you can see my phone is stupid. Why is it reflect? It's a blue phone. It's not green in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, so if I turn the screen on, does that screw it up? No, it still doesn't. No. See, this is the problem with Zoom. They need to fix their green screen. But yeah, like, I've been with Vodafone for years. I love them. I have almost no faults. And that's not entirely true. My work phone is Aussie Broadband.
Yep.
Because I'm with Aussie Broadband, so work mobile is Aussie Broadband as well. But the reason with Vodafone is we have a big data pool. So my phone, I've got Son's phone, I've got my mother-in-law's phone, I've got my brother-in-law's phone, and I've got another device on there too, a tablet, I think. And so we get shared data pool.
Yep.
And we get like 500 gig a month or something. And we're paying $49 a month for the phone, for the plans. So it's just ridiculous, and you can't get that anywhere else. But you're correct. But when we travel, I've got an old 10-year-old, 10-year-old candy bar phone that when we go traveling, we just shove a $2 Telstra prepaid in it, put $10 worth of credit on it, and chuck it in the glove box.
Yep.
Because when something goes pear-shaped, if we're going to have signal, that's going to be the best chance at having signal.
Yep.
It's actually that old. It actually has an external aerial connection that we have a magnetic aerial that I can stick on the roof of the car. Oh, nice. So it's just a little 3-inch aerial or something. So it's a 3 or 4 decibel gain. But that, if there's any chance at all of having signal, that's going to pick it up. And actually, have you seen out west? They have the mobile boosters. Oh, now they've got them. I think it's the Hume Highway. Is it the one that runs across Australia?
Yeah.
Across the Nullarbor. They've got what they call mobile boosters. They're basically a parabolic dish, like a satellite dish.
Yeah.
And where the LNB is, which is what you would on a satellite dish, the LNB is what receives the data from the signal. But they basically have effectively like a flat plate on like a stand, like it stands up like that, so you can put your phone on it, and your phone sits up like that. Yep. And it's right at the focal point of the satellite dish, and the satellite dish is pointed at the closest tower, which could be a few hundred k's away, and it actually boosts the signal to the point where you might have 1 or 2 bars of signal.
Oh,
so
nice.
You can actually make a phone call. So yeah, I've started seeing those pop up. They're pretty cool. They're just randomly in the middle of nowhere. There's just this phone booster, which is a really good idea. Yeah. So you might have a chance of getting signal. The other thing you can do if you are stuck in the middle of nowhere and you don't have signal is stand up on the roof of your car, which does 2 things. One, and hold your phone above your head. It does 2 things. One, it puts the phone higher, so you more basically the way a signal travels, it travels in waves, up and down waves and peaks. So if you can get the phone higher, you're more likely to catch one of those waves. The other thing, it sounds like a hippie, you're going to get higher so you can catch a wave. It's a hippie surfer. But the other thing it does is standing on the roof of the car, the actual car becomes more of an amplifier, and it's more likely to bounce the signal off the boot or the bonnet of the car and bounce it into your phone. So I've done that a couple of times down in Victoria when we were doing the footy training and stuff. One of the guys flipped their car and we had no signal, and his car was upside down, but we jumped up on the car, and even though it was upside down, jumped up on the car and stood up and held the phone up, and we got like 1 bar, which is enough to send a text message back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the problem. Telstra has such a infrastructure advantage because of the way the legislation is written, that even if somebody else wants to either piggyback off the tower or put another tower in, effectively Telstra has to approve it.
Right.
Because otherwise it might interfere with our tower or some other garbage they come up with. So there's so many locations that don't have other network boosters on them purely because Telstra doesn't want them there. Yeah. It's not that Telstra, by default, Telstra's network isn't any better. Their technology is actually lagging a lot of other providers. But they have an infrastructure boost. They have physically more towers. They have physically more boosters. Therefore, by default, they have a better signal.
Yep.
A lot of other carriers have less towers, and in a lot of areas have far less towers and have almost the same coverage because they have better technology. So yeah, just because they, Telstra is kind of favoured upon by the legislation writers, so they tend to have a fair chunk in. Well, it's like NBN. You talk to NBN, technically they're an independent contractor or independent operation. They can put infrastructure in anywhere they want. But if Telstra is putting infrastructure in an area, the NBN kind of takes second fiddle to it.
Right.
Because Telstra gets priority, even though realistically one should complement the other one. But Telstra gets paid to roll out to an area, so if they're rolling out to an area and the NBN can do the same job, well, Telstra's going to take priority on it, so they get the check. That's really all it comes down to. So, but yeah, so we'll see. I mean, great, it's contagious. They are correct. There's definitely a disparity in the legislation. It does need to change. I know a lot of rural places for years have been saying, well, you know, actually Ipswich has an interesting dilemma. Ipswich, sorry, not Ipswich, Gympie has an interesting dilemma. All around Gympie, rural, Telstra actually works really well. You get into Gympie, it actually doesn't work very well at all, and you're better off with Optus or Vodafone. Yeah. But once you get out of Gympie, you have to use Telstra. So it's kind of interesting the way that can also be the opposite. People have to carry two phones there as well, but not, ironically, not for when they're out of town. It's for when they're in town.
Jeez.
So it's there's I don't know. We'll see what happens, but there really needs to be some sort of shake up in the industry to level it all up. The advent of I mean, there's a lot of communities, not necessarily in America, but other. I don't want to say third world countries because I hate that term, but in lesser technologically advanced countries than ours, in some respects, they're far more technologically advanced, I should say, because they have things like micro mesh networks set up where there might only be very, very limited cell phone communication within the town and nothing rural at all. But they've set up micro mesh networks so that it doesn't matter where you are, you get internet access.
Yep.
You may not be able to make a phone call in a traditional sense, but most phones these days have the, what is it? I can't remember what it's called.
Wi-Fi calling?
Cellfire, whatever it is, where basically if you've got Wi-Fi signal, you can still make a phone call anyway.
Yep. All my phone calls are on Wi-Fi.
Hey?
All my phone calls are on Wi-Fi while I'm at home.
Yeah, mine, I turn my Wi-Fi off at home. Because the irony of that is that my phone signal here, like if I from home here, I actually get really bad Wi-Fi on my phone, but I get really good 4G. Yep. But when I go downtown, I hardly get any 4G, and it's like 200 meters that way. So I don't really know. This house has got a lot of really dodgy wiring in it. Well, I say dodgy; it's old. It's a 60, 70-year-old wiring. Yep. And I think a lot of it interferes with the Wi-Fi because you walk more than 6 foot away from the router and you don't get signal.
Oh, jeez, that's no good.
In one direction, but you can walk the whole entire length of the backyard and you get signal if you're in one particular spot. So I don't know what that is, but yeah. Does it come to that? Does it come to the point where communities set up their own mesh networks to cover paddocks and farms and
probably need to
and stuff, and people just pay $10 a month or something to have access to this mesh network that lets them have data communication?
Get their femtocells like they do in the US.
Yeah, but I mean, you've still got to have, like, if you're relying on those, the problem with that, you've still got to have a decent broadband connection.
Yeah.
And a lot of rural doesn't have a lot of this, especially if they've got satellite internet. It's absolutely horrific for phone calls. The latency can be 600, 700, 800 millisecond latency. Data's data. Data's not going to care, but it's not going to help your phone call any because it's the between the packet loss and the lag. Having voice communications on satellite is absolutely horrendous. Not on all of them. I would imagine the Starlink's apparently Starlink actually is really good for that.
Yep.
But traditional satellite setups are. But that's another option, I guess. If everyone just has a Starlink,
Problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, you still need a mesh network though, because you're still on limited range. Like we're talking out the middle of Australia, you can have farms that are, several thousand k's in any direction.
Yeah.
So I mean, you still need to have, and this is where analog was perfect because you could have a shortwave antenna in your backyard of the farmhouse, and it would reach. Well, it would reach halfway across the globe, but it would reach all your paddocks. And if you most UHFs, I can't remember the channels. I want to say it's like channel 21 or 23 and 24, something like that. They're actually data channels,
right?
And you can actually send. It might have been 15 or 16. I can't remember the old analog signals, but the old CBs used to have dedicated 2 channels for data. They had a send channel and a receive channel, so you could actually send. Okay, it was slow. It was radio frequency signal, but it was still enough to do basic communications, basic data communication. And up until recently, a lot of the emergency services, that's how their transponders worked, because it was just so reliable over huge distances.
Yeah.
So there are options. I guess it just depends. Do we want to rely on the carriers to come up with solutions, or is there going to be some private company like there is in... What was that guy in... was it Colombia? He started up his own mesh network ISP.
There's all crap. So he started his own one.
Yeah. And people pay him because at the end of the day, it works perfectly fine and it's better than what's commercially available.
Yep.
I mean, are we due for that sort of overhaul in this country?
Maybe.
Somebody buys himself a dozen Sky Mesh dishes and sets up their own private, mesh network. That could be a thing.
Yeah, get on it.
Done. I'll have it up by next week.
Thanks.
We'll talk all about it. And then I'll wake up.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Was that yours or mine? That was yours, eh?
Mine. Yeah.
Sorry, it's been a long day. So your favourite person, Elon?
Oh.
Mate, buddy, pal. Other than a lot of crap he's been getting for stuff that isn't his fault. And don't get me wrong, he's done stuff wrong, but there's just so much going on at the moment that he's getting in trouble for everything, even stuff he's not even doing. But one interesting thing that's come out recently, obviously he's charging $8 a month, which is fine for verified ticks. I don't have a problem with that because, once again, 95% of it is commercial. So it's all a tax deduction anyway. But one thing I do like is he's looking at doing... they're returning. So there was an issue with blue verification. Won't go into it now because everybody's probably bored to death about reading about it. But basically, things didn't quite go the way they're supposed to. But November 29th, they're relaunching that system correctly to make sure it's actually going to work properly. Stopping impersonations and that sort of stuff. But what they're looking at doing is he wants to add multiple coloured ticks for different things.
Yep.
So, for example, what's he saying here? Seriously, why is there 400,000... ZDNet, I tell you what, absolute terrible garbage now. Their sites are so loaded, and I've got ad blockers, and their sites are so loaded with ads that literally every time you scroll, one pops up from the top of the page and one pops up at the bottom of the page and leaves about 4 lines of text in the middle of the page. Like, it's come on,
website
guys.
With little bits of news sprinkled around.
Yeah, it's not great. I can't even find it, and it skips every time the one at the top goes up. It pushes the page text down. And then when the one at the bottom comes up, it pushes the page text up. So you're scrolling and it's jittering like this because it can't figure out what it's supposed to be doing.
Terrible.
But basically, the short answer from what I was reading this before, if I'll try and do it from memory because I can't freaking find what I was up to, they're looking at doing different coloured ticks. So blue obviously will be the high-profile verifications currently like they are now. Your corporations or your celebrities and things verifiable. Things that tend to get impersonated a lot, Coke's going to give you $20 billion if you follow this account, stuff like that. Yep. So all the legit companies are all going to be blue, like they were, because everybody knows that. There's going to be other colours that are going to do different things. I don't have the list of colours in front of me, but for example, there'll be verified individuals who aren't necessarily celebrities, but people who want to be verified. So you might be a YouTuber and you want to have your YouTube account, your Facebook account, your Twitter account, like all that as one sort of thing. They'll be like red or orange or something. And then there'll be just an individual or a private company
and all
who
stuff.
more wants to protect their IP rather than, be the number one person trending on Twitter, So they'll be like a yellow checkbox, so they're still verified that they are that legit corporation or that legit person. Yep. So there's going to be different levels. Then there'll be like a like your official Twitter staff or your official like help desk staff. They'll have their own color. So if you get a message from them, like you'll know you're actually having a conversation with their help desk rather than some random.
Yep.
So there's going to be a lot of stuff like that, and I have to admit I don't mind that idea. Not all the stuff's like there won't necessarily be paid verifications. The blue check's still going to be their biggest, highest priority one.
Yep.
So a lot of the other ones you still have to jump through hoops to get them to prove that you are who you say you are and stuff like that.
Yeah, you said one was going to go to like a journalist, like New York Times, and then they could themselves give out the verified colour for all their
sub
stuff.
Accounts.
Yeah,
the other thing, like the sub accounts. Sub accounts will be different than they are now. Like currently, if you're, I'll use that example of a journalist. You're Tom Scott at Courier Mail and Fred Smith at Courier Mail. Is your sort of thing, but they'll actually be like a sub account. Like there'll be Courier Mail, and then there'll be a sub account. Author. Tom Scott or whatever. Like it'll be like verified in two-factor almost, because it'll be the actual journalist who's verified and it'll be the newspaper that's verified. So there is some stuff that they're doing that is actually going to be pretty cool, and I think stuff like that is definitely going to work well.
He's going to bring video to Twitter as well, so you'll be able to do video stuff on there, and also he's currently somebody has discovered by looking at the source code, and he's authenticated it, that they're going to have encrypted DMs, so people won't be able to see what you're talking about in special messages, in private messages.
I think that's only for verified accounts, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So if you're not verified, you can't have encrypted messages because terrorists. I'm assuming. I don't know why. I'm guessing that's what it is, but I think that's one of the perks that because I know like the blue check mark, they'll have priority in replies, mentions, and searches. They'll also be able to post long videos, post long audio. They won't have ads, or at least have less ads. I dare say they'll still have ads.
Yeah, half the ads.
They'll just have less ads, and I think I think part of that priority accounts is that they're going to have those encrypted DMs. But I don't think it works. Like it will only be between. I think, and I can't. It's not in this article. I think I was reading it in a different article. But I think that's only going to be like if two verified accounts message each other. If one of those accounts is unverified, it's still not going to be encrypted because there's kind of no point, because you don't know the other account.
Yep.
I think so. Yeah, look, a lot of people bagged him out and gave him a hard time, but I think, for a guy who basically didn't even want the company and then was basically sued into buying it, I don't think he's done a bad job. Those few people who got locked in that car park might think otherwise, but that's not his fault. You got to admit, he didn't do that. That's the security guys. They were a bit overzealous there.
Yep.
You think if I get firing 1,000 people may not have been the coolest thing to do, but it's not like he said fire them, take their cards off them, and don't let them out of the car park.
Yeah.
Like that's on security. That one, they're like,
Whoops.
you're taking their badges off them. They can't sign out of the car park. Like you've got to let them out.
Yeah, then take the badge.
That's a little rude, that one. So
it appears as though a new way to test major updates to the stable Proton branch is on the way. A tweet from Pierre-Luc Griffiths, a Steam Deck developer with Valve, showed off a new Proton layer that can be downloaded now. Proton Next seems to be an in-between from experimental to stable, but focuses more on containing the next stable update rather than constant experimental testing ground. In the tweet, Pierre linked to GitHub with what looks like a new section that will show the version that is in Proton Next as well. You can download the layer for yourself by searching Proton at the top. If you scroll down, you'll find Proton Next option, and you can install it like a regular game. Immediately after, you'll be able to see the option for Proton Next if you check your compatibility tab. As right now, Proton Next contains Proton 7.05, which is the next stable update. The update will feature a multitude of fixes and make new games playable. Following titles are now playable with this release: Rift, Unravel 2, Airborne Kingdom, Nancy Drew, Legend of the Crystal Skull, Revolt, Aspire, Ina's Tale, Battle Realms Zen Edition, Death Smiles 2, Primal Carnage Extinction, Pico Park Classic Edition, Six Ages Ride Like the Wind, Dark Star 1, Indiana Jones and the Emperor Tomb, and Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition. So, new stuff.
I like Indy.
Play. Yep.
Indy was good.
Cool.
So, for people who are wondering, when we're talking about proteins and stuff, it's not a food. Don't worry. Well, it probably is a food somewhere, but it's so when you're running Linux, to run a lot of Windows compatible games, because a lot of games now are being dual platform developed. They'll run on Linux natively without any intervention at all. But Steam has Proton installed, and Proton is effectively an interpreter. Interprets Linux, makes it thinks it's Windows, so that the games can run the way they need to with the correct drivers and correct graphics card settings and all that sort of stuff. Steam Deck is another example of that. The Steam handheld controller that they launched, it runs Proton natively, so games can work. And Pop OS, which is the OS I'm running, Proton does a very good job, and a lot of my games run better under this than they do under Windows. Yeah. But every time Proton comes out, it's both good and bad, because it fixes a lot of the bugs that are there, and unfortunately sometimes it also breaks some of the games that currently work. You've got to make sure when you upgrade Proton that if a game doesn't work, the first thing you do is you just set it back one revision or two revisions, because sometimes that fixes the loading problems. But it's it's a very, very good program. It does a very good job of handling a lot of that interaction. It's getting more lightweight, and in the early days when you used to launch Proton, it used to take nearly as long to load Proton as it did to load the game. It was a very, very long, drawn-out process. And there was a lot of customizing you had to do. You had to select different graphics things and different sound things and this and that and the other. But now it pretty much does with a couple of exceptions on a couple of games, it's set and forget. You don't need to touch it at all. So it's doing a really good job of that.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to see this new one. Because there are a couple of games, not so much on my computer. My computer's pretty beast mode, so it doesn't really care if there's a bit of a graphics issue or something. It sort of just pushes through it. My son's computer's, it's my previous streaming rig to this one, so it's 3, probably nearly 4-year-old. Yeah. So as far as gaming PCs go, it's right on the verge of being useless. I have put a better video card in it, and I've bumped up the RAM a bit, but it's CPU limited for the most part. And once again, for the most part, it works perfectly fine under Linux. It's got Pop OS on it as well, and Proton under Steam does a very good job. But there's a couple that you have to add flags to the start line commands to get it to think it's running like DX11 and doing a few little hacks and workarounds. But looking at some of the stuff that they're doing in this new version of Proton, it looks like it might fix some of those issues, so that'll be really good. Even if they can get stable frame rate, it hasn't got to be blindingly fast. Like, it'll play on low graphics settings, it'll play anything at 30 or more frames. Yep. But you get games like Hot Wheels, which doesn't use much system resources, and it'll play at 100 frames, but it'll only play it for 10 minutes, and then it just fills the memory up Like you just sit there and you watch the memory graphs just tick, 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 building. So stuff like that, hopefully they'll fix because, it'd be great to be able to stay on, to keep you, a little bit more compatibility.
Yep.
Which, I mean, that's a Linux downfall all in all, isn't it? Really, still to this day, like Linux is great, and all my systems here now are on Pop OS. I don't use Windows at all except for my media PC, and that's only because it's all it does is play YouTube videos. So it doesn't really matter what that runs on. So, being a fan, big fan.
Yep.
Speaking of Windows.
Windows
and Windows. Why not? Let's keep it at that. Speaking of Windows, Microsoft Windows subsystem for Linux just hit another milestone. The Microsoft Windows system for Linux with WSL for running GNU Linux environments on Windows 10 and Windows 11 has reached version 1 officially and is now generally available. Microsoft's been building WSL, including its own custom Linux kernel, for several years. At first, WS and WSL were optional. WSL2 were optional components within Windows, but last October, Microsoft made the preview available in the store. The store version could deliver users, mostly developers, fast updates, features independently of Windows. WSL is popular among developers. Stack Overflow's 2022 developer survey revealed WSL used by 15% of developers, behind 31% using macOS, 40% using Linux, and 62% using Windows. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not bad, really. 15% market share. That's pretty acceptable. As well as WSL shedding the preview label, Microsoft's also making the app from the store default for new users. As Microsoft noted last October, the release of Windows 11 long-term plan was to move WSL users to the store version. Still supported in the inbox version of WSL while continuing development. With its release, Microsoft's backporting WSL functionality to Windows 10 and 11 to make store versions default experience. The updates are available for Windows 10 and Windows 11 at the end of November. Once you've got the right version, if you're a new user, you can just run WSL install and you'll be set up right away. If you're an existing user, run WSL --update to update the latest store version.
Cool.
So it's now got support for systemd, which is a service manager, runs by default in some distros. So you can use Linux GUI apps in Windows 10 now. It was exclusive only Windows 11, but they're backwards compatible a bit. So you can use all your Linux GUI stuff or your whatever you would install if you're using a distribution of Linux, basically in the desktop.
Nice. So
it's kind of weird. It still seems weird to me that you're running Linux under Windows, given that Windows is written in Linux anyway. But I mean, traditionally you've always just had to run a virtual machine or something, but now it's native support, and which goes with what I was saying with Linux. I mean, Pop OS has by default. You can run Windows programs on Pop OS. It has a default install mode where it will install them under sure, it uses a wine or something like that, but even Proton now will install a lot of applications directly without running wine. You can do it directly from Steam a lot of the time. You can actually click on Steam, go install non-Steam program, and click on that and just select it, and it'll install it as if it was running in Windows. It doesn't sort of know the difference.
Yeah.
Some apps are a bit of a problem because they require a very specific driver that's only Windows, and that sort of messes things up a bit. But like I've got this is great. This is clear and invisible. This is a USB temperature, submersible temperature probe. So when we're doing canning and stuff like that, you put it into the can to make sure you're getting the right temperature to get rid of all your salmonella and get rid of all your bacteria at certain temperatures for certain times. And this works under Linux, but you can't access. It has its own proprietary driver, which you can access. So I've discovered it's got like a USB thumb drive sort of thing attached, which you can use because it's just a USB thumb drive. But when you go to use the actual data logging part of it, you can't access the tables and can't access the data logging part because it's on this secure part of the disk, which is only accessible with the app, and the program's only available under Windows, and won't. The program runs under Linux, but it won't install that. There's like one specific driver file it's looking for, and it won't work under Linux. So that's kind of bugging me a bit. I got to figure out how to make that work. But
Linux version, guys, get with the program.
So there's the funny thing is, and it's kind of I found it a bit weird. It's a commercial kitchen thing, like laboratories, kitchens. It's specifically designed for that application. I would have thought a lot of laboratories would be running Linux.
Yeah,
so it's like a USB. It's a normal USB on that side. But it's it's strange they didn't have a Linux driver for it. I would have thought that would have been a pretty common thing, but apparently not.
Guess not.
So,
thanks for listening to the Aussie Tech Heads show. We can be found at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Email us willowarlock@aussietechheads.com.au, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.